It's been raining for 6 days straight, not a storm that passes. A relentless, gray, soaking rain that never lets up, that's turned the ground to mud and the air itself into something wet and heavy. Your fire went out on day 2. Your skins are soaked through, and you are colder right now than you would be on a clear, freezing winter night. That's not an exaggeration. Wet cold is deadlier than dry cold, because water pulls heat out of your body far faster than air ever could. And for an ancient human, with no fire, no dry shelter, and no way to warm up, a long stretch of rain wasn't an inconvenience. It was one of the most dangerous situations they could find themselves in. So picture yourself there. Everything you own is soaked. Every scrap of dry wood has vanished. The temperature hasn't even dropped that much, and yet your body is shutting down faster than it ever would in the cold you're used to. So how did ancient humans survive weeks of rain that never stopped? Because the answer involves a piece of survival technology so clever that a 5,300-year-old body found frozen in the Alps was still carrying it. A discovery that changed how we understand ancient fire itself. But first, be honest, could you keep a fire alive through a week of nonstop rain with no lighter, no matches, nothing? Tell me in the comments. I don't think most of us could. Let's start with why wet cold is so much more dangerous than people realize, because this is the entire key to the story. Water conducts heat away from your body dramatically faster than air does. Stand in dry air at a chilly temperature, and your body can usually keep up, generating enough heat to stay stable. Get soaked through in that exact same temperature, and your body loses heat so fast it can barely keep pace. Sometimes not at all. That's why hypothermia, the dangerous drop in body temperature, kills people far more often in cool, wet, windy conditions than in dry, brutally cold ones. You don't need a blizzard to die of cold. You just need to be wet for long enough without a way to get dry. And rain doesn't just soak you once, it keeps soaking you day after day, giving your body no chance to recover, no window to dry out and warm back up. For an ancient human, a week of steady rain meant a week-long fight against a threat that was quietly, patiently pulling the warmth out of their body the entire time. So the single most important thing in a situation like this wasn't shelter, and it wasn't food. It was something much smaller, much more fragile, and it was in danger of dying out completely. Fire. In a long stretch of rain, fire wasn't a comfort. It was the difference between living and dying, and rain is fire's oldest enemy. Think about what fire actually needs: dry fuel, a spark, and enough shelter from wind and water to let a flame catch and grow. In a downpour that's lasted days, every one of those things becomes brutally hard to find. The ground is soaked. Fallen branches are waterlogged straight through. Even the air itself is heavy with moisture. A fire that goes out in weather like this can feel almost impossible to relight. And without it, there's no way to dry your skins, warm your body, cook food safely, or keep the worst of the cold at bay through the night. This is why ancient humans treated fire completely differently than we do today. It wasn't something you casually started and let go out when convenient. It was something you protected fiercely because you understood exactly how hard it would be to get back if you lost it. The real survival skill wasn't just making fire. It was never, ever letting it fully die. So, how do you keep a fire alive when the sky refuses to stop raining on it? The first trick was knowing where to find fuel that the rain hadn't ruined. Standing dead trees, the kind still upright, not lying soaked on the ground, often have dry wood at their core, protected by an outer layer that's already taken the worst of the weather. Split that outer layer away, and the wood inside can still catch, even after days of rain. Ancient people learned to recognize these standing dead trees at a glance, and to split into them for the dry heartwood hidden beneath the wet surface. The second trick was choosing the right bark. Certain trees, especially birch, have bark that's naturally resistant to water and full of flammable oils. It can catch fire even when the surface is damp, almost like nature's own fire starter. Peeling curls of this bark became one of the most valuable materials an ancient person could carry into wet weather, because when everything else refused to burn, birch bark often still would. And the third trick was shelter. Not for the person, but for the flame itself. A fire tucked beneath a rock overhang, angled just right, shielded by a wall of stacked stone or wood, could survive rain that would instantly kill a fire out in the open. Keeping fire alive in a storm wasn't luck, it was a skill, built from knowing exactly where dry fuel hides and exactly how to shield a flame from the sky. Quick one for the comments. Did you know birch bark can catch fire even when it's damp? Nature basically built its own fire starter. Wild. But even with all of that, sometimes a fire went out anyway. And this is where ancient humans did something genuinely brilliant. They figured out how to carry fire itself. In the Alps, high in the mountains, a body was discovered frozen in ice, preserved for around 5,300 years. He's known today as Ötzi, and what he was carrying, when researchers finally examined it, stunned them. Along with tools and weapons, he had a small birch bark container. Inside it, wrapped carefully in fresh maple leaves, was something that changed everything we thought we knew about ancient survival. The remains of glowing embers, packed to be carried, and kept alive. Think about what that means. This wasn't just a fire-starting kit, it was a portable fire, a way to carry a living ember from one camp to the next, protected in a waterproof birch bark case, insulated in leaves, ready to be coaxed back into flame the moment it was needed. If your fire went out in the rain, and you had one of these, you weren't starting from nothing. You had a spark, already alive, already waiting. That's over 5,000 years of engineering, wrapped in a leaf. Ancient humans didn't just know how to make fire. They knew how to protect it, preserve it, and carry it with them like something precious. Because in weather like endless rain, it genuinely was. And fire wasn't the only thing they learned to protect from the wet. Their own bodies needed a second layer of defense. And the solution came from an unexpected place. Fat. Animal fat? Rendered down and worked into hides and skins, does something remarkable. It makes them water resistant. A greased hide sheds rain far better than a dry, untreated one, keeping the wearer's skin drier and their body heat locked in for longer. Ancient people across many different regions independently discovered this same trick, that rubbing fat into leather created a barrier the rain simply couldn't soak through as easily. It's a small thing, easy to overlook, but in a week of nonstop rain, it could be the difference between staying dangerously wet all day and staying just dry enough to survive the night. Every part of an ancient human's toolkit, from the clothes on their back to the fire in their hand, had been quietly adapted, generation after generation, to fight the exact same enemy, water pulling the warmth out of their bodies. But here's a strange twist to everything you've just heard. Everything so far makes rain sound like a relentless enemy, and most of the time, for most of our ancestors, it was. But there's one place on Earth where the opposite happened, where rain didn't threaten human life. It built an entire lost world instead. Picture the Sahara. Now picture it green, not a metaphor, an actual documented period in Earth's history, starting around 14,500 years ago and lasting almost 10,000 years. Monsoon rains pushed deep into what is now the driest, most hostile desert on the planet. Lakes formed where there is now nothing but sand for hundreds of miles. Rivers cut through land that today can't support a single tree. Grassland spread across territory that would kill an unprepared traveler in hours. Scientists call it the African humid period. Most people just call it the Green Sahara. And the humans living through those 10,000 years of rain didn't just survive it. They built their lives entirely around it. Across rock walls scattered through the region, ancient people painted images that seem almost impossible to reconcile with the Sahara we know today. People swimming, herds of cattle being driven by hunters, animals that need rivers and lakes to survive. In a rock shelter in southwestern Libya called Takarkori, archaeologists found evidence of people living in the same spot for thousands of years, generation after generation, in a place that today offers nothing but heat and sand. And here's where it gets genuinely stunning. In 2025, scientists managed to extract DNA from two naturally mummified bodies at that same site, buried around 7,000 years ago. What they found rewrote what we thought we knew. These people belonged to a distinct, long-isolated population, one that had split off from other African populations tens of thousands of years earlier and stayed separate the entire time, even while the Sahara around them turned green and lush. An entire hidden branch of the human family tree, living and dying in a rainy paradise that would completely vanish within a few thousand years, leaving no trace above ground that it had ever existed at all. Quick one for the comments. Did you know the Sahara Desert used to be green, with lakes, hippos, and rain that barely stopped for 10,000 years? Genuinely wild to picture, but paradises like that don't last forever. And how this one ended tells you just as much about survival as how it began. The rain didn't vanish overnight. It faltered and returned, and faltered again. Long, dry stretches followed by sudden bursts of wetness, back and forth, for generation after generation, before the region finally dried out for good. Communities living through that slow ending had no way of knowing, at any given moment, whether the rain was truly gone or just pausing. And when it was finally, permanently gone, the people didn't simply disappear along with it. They moved, following the retreating water toward rivers and lake basins that still held on, carrying with them everything they'd learned about living beside unpredictable rain, into new lands, into new lives. And that same instinct, read the danger and move before it's too late, mattered just as much for ordinary ancient humans facing an ordinary rainy season. Low ground floods. A comfortable, sheltered spot in dry weather can turn into a death trap the moment days of rain send water rushing down from higher ground. People learned to watch the clouds, feel the wind shift, and move uphill before the water arrived. And even after the rain stopped, the danger wasn't fully gone. Standing water left behind by a long storm bred sickness and drew insects, turning a moment of relief into a second, quieter threat. Surviving the rain itself was only half the battle, knowing when and where to move. Both before it came and after it left was the other half. So step back and look at what a stretch of endless rain actually meant for ancient humans, because it's bigger than it first appears. For most of our ancestors, most of the time, it demanded the skills you've just heard. Protecting a fire like it was alive, finding dry fuel inside a soaked world, treating hides against the water, and reading the land closely enough to know when to move. But every so often, on a scale most of us never think about, rain did something else entirely. It turned deserts into paradises for 10,000 years at a time, and let entire hidden populations live and thrive in places that seem, today, like the very definition of impossible. Rain, it turns out, was never simply one thing. It was the quiet, patient killer that stole the warmth from your body in a matter of hours. And, somewhere else on the same planet, at the same rough moment in history, it was the reason an entire way of life became possible at all. Our ancestors had to be ready for both versions of it, sometimes within the very same lifetime. So how did ancient humans survive weeks of endless rain? Not by staying dry. That was rarely possible. They survived by refusing to let their fire die, by knowing exactly where to find wood the rain hadn't ruined, by carrying embers like something precious when they had to move, and by choosing their ground with a caution the rest of us have mostly forgotten. Every skill in this video exists because, at some point, not having it cost someone their life, and the people who survived made absolutely sure that lesson was never lost. Honestly, I think rain might be the most underestimated danger in this entire channel. There's no roar, no fangs, no obvious moment of fear. Just gray skies, day after day, quietly stealing the warmth out of your body while you barely notice it happening. And our ancestors didn't just endure it. They studied it, outthought it, and turned a slow, silent killer into something survivable. One dry embers and one greased hide at a time. That kind of patient, careful cleverness doesn't get nearly enough credit. It should. If this changed how you see the people you came from, subscribe. That's the whole point of this channel. The why behind being human. And if you want to see how these same people survived killing heat, freezing cold, the dark, hunger, predators, the deadliest animal on Earth, the dangers of being born, and a disaster that almost wiped us out, those videos are on screen right now. Go watch. Because surviving the rain itself was only the first fight. What that rain left behind, the stagnant water, the sickness it carried, was a second, quieter enemy, one too small to see, that could turn the smallest cut into a death sentence. How ancient humans survived, that is coming next.